For 12 years, I wrote a check every month to my daughter's family. It started with the down payment on their house. Then it grew into private school tuition, luxury car leases, vacations to places I'd never seen. I did it because I loved her, because her husband had lost his job twice, because I believed that's what fathers do. Last Thanksgiving, my son-in-law handed me a paper napkin to wipe my mouth, not a cloth napkin, a paper one. My daughter didn't even look up. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't family. I was a silent investor they decided to stop respecting. My name is Harold Benson. I'm 68 years old. This is the story of how I sold the house I built with my own hands, moved into a one-bedroom apartment, and let my daughter discover what it really means to stand on her own. I retired in 2015 after 42 years as a union electrician. My wife Martha passed away 6 years earlier, breast cancer. She fought for 2 years, never complained, never asked why her. The last thing she said to me was, "Take care of our girl." Our girl was Jennifer. She was 34 then, married to a man named Bradley who sold medical devices, or tried to. Bradley had the charm of a late-night infomercial and the follow-through of a screen door on a submarine. Jennifer and Bradley lived in a suburb of Charlotte, North Carolina in a house they couldn't afford. They bought it in 2013 with a balloon mortgage and a prayer. By 2016 they were drowning. I knew because Jennifer called me at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday crying. She said Bradley had been laid off again, third time in 4 years. She said the bank was threatening foreclosure. She said she didn't know what to do. I didn't hesitate. I had savings. I had a paid-off house in Hickory, a pension and Social Security. I wasn't rich but I was comfortable. I told her I would help. I wrote a check for $68,000, the rest of their mortgage. I didn't call it a loan. I didn't ask for terms. I said, "This is what family does." Jennifer cried harder. She said I was the best father in the world. Bradley got on the phone and thanked me profusely, calling me sir and promising he'd pay me back someday. I told him not to worry about it. I meant it. That was the beginning, not of generosity, of expectation. Over the next 7 years, the request became routine. Private school for my granddaughter Kayla, $42,000. A new car for Bradley because his work image mattered, $36,000. A family emergency that turned out to be a vacation in Aspen, $15,000. Roof repairs, HVAC replacements, landscaping, a pool installation. Each time the story was the same. Something unexpected, something urgent, something only I could fix. I never said no. Not because I was a fool, because I was afraid. If I said no, would Jennifer still call? Would she still bring Kayla to visit on Christmas? Would I become the old man in Hickory who died alone in the house where his wife used to hum while she cooked? So I said yes. Every time, and every time the thank you got shorter, the phone calls less frequent, the visits more rushed. By 2022, I had transferred nearly $300,000 to Jennifer and Bradley. My savings were gone. My pension covered my bills but barely. I stopped eating out. I stopped buying new clothes. I started driving only to the grocery store and back to save gas, but I never told them. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want them to worry about me when they had their own lives. What a fool I was. The Thanksgiving dinner was supposed to be at their house. Jennifer had called me the week before to confirm. "Dad, Bradley is smoking a turkey. It's going to be amazing. Just bring yourself. Don't worry about anything." I arrived at 2 p.m. The house was perfect, as always. The kind of perfect that costs money. New hardwood floors, a renovated kitchen with marble countertops, a chandelier in the dining room that looked like it belonged in a museum. I parked my 2010 Ford Fusion next to Bradley's leased BMW and their new Tesla. I straightened my jacket, the same jacket I'd worn for 10 years, and walked to the front door. Jennifer opened it. She hugged me quick, shallow, the way you hug a coworker you don't particularly like. Then she looked me up and down and said, "Dad, you could have dressed up a little." I was wearing clean khakis and a button-down shirt. It was the nicest outfit I owned. The guests arrived soon after. Bradley's business partners, Jennifer's friends from the country club. People with names like Sutton and Chad and Blair. They spoke in acronyms, ETF, ROI, HELOC. I didn't understand half of what they said. I sat in a corner of the living room holding a glass of water because I didn't want to drink their expensive wine, and I watched. Kayla, my granddaughter, came over to say hello. She was 12 now, tall, pretty with her mother's eyes. She gave me a quick hug and whispered, "Grandpa, why didn't you bring a gift? Everyone brings a gift." I didn't know what to say. I had brought a gift, a $50 gift card to a bookstore, but it was still in my jacket pocket. I had been waiting for the right moment. Now I felt like it wasn't enough. The dinner was served at 4 p.m. Bradley carved the turkey with a theatrical flourish, narrating his process like he was on a cooking show. Jennifer moved around the table, refilling wine glasses, laughing at jokes I didn't understand. I sat at the end of the table next to a man named Trevor who introduced himself as a wealth strategist. He asked what I did for a living. I said I was retired. He asked what I did before that. I said I was an electrician. He said, "Oh, trades, that's hands-on." Then he turned away and started talking to the person on his other side. I ate my meal in silence. The turkey was dry. The gravy was from a packet. The mashed potatoes were instant. I could tell because Martha used to make real ones. But I didn't complain. I smiled. I nodded. I said everything was delicious. After dinner, everyone moved to the living room for coffee. I stayed behind to help clear the plates. It was habit. Martha and I always cleaned up together. I stacked the dishes, carried them to the kitchen, and started rinsing them in the sink. Jennifer walked in and saw me, her face tight. "Dad, you don't have to do that. The housekeeper comes tomorrow." I said, "It's no trouble, I'm just helping." She sighed. "Okay, but don't break anything, those plates are from Williams Sonoma." Set down the plate I was holding, I dried my hands on a paper towel, the same kind of paper towel Bradley would later hand me. And then I walked back to the living room, the coffee was served in small cups. I don't drink coffee at night, it keeps me awake. So I just sat there holding a warm cup, watching people talk. At one point, someone made a joke about old people and technology. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, even though I wasn't sure if the joke was about me. Then Bradley stood up and made an announcement. He was starting a new business, a disruptive fintech platform that would change how people invested in real estate. He needed $100,000 in seed capital. He said he was talking to investors and was confident he'd raise the money by spring. As he spoke, he looked around the room. Some people nodded, others avoided eye contact. When his eyes landed on me, I felt my stomach drop. I knew that look. It was the same look he'd given me before every request, the look that said, "Your family, you wouldn't let us fail." I looked down at my hands. They were old hands, calloused, vector hands that had pulled miles of copper wire through half-constructed buildings. Hands that had held my wife's as she took her last breath. Hands that had written checks for a decade. I didn't say anything, I didn't nod, I just sat there. The evening wound down, guests left. Kayla went to her room to watch videos on her iPad. Jennifer and Bradley cleaned up sort of. They put dishes in the sink but didn't wash them. They left leftovers on the counter. They turned off some lights and dimmed others. I stood by the front door waiting for a goodbye. Jennifer came over and gave me another quick hug. "Drive safe, Dad, the roads might be icy." Bradley handed me something on his way to the garage, a paper napkin. He said, "Here, your mouth was messy." I took the napkin, I wiped my mouth even though it wasn't messy, and then I walked to my car. The drive to Hickory took 45 minutes. I spent the first 20 minutes in silence, then I started talking to Martha. I told her about the dinner, about the paper napkin. About Jennifer's sigh when I tried to help. About the look in Bradley's eyes when he talked about his $100,000. "Martha, I don't think they see me anymore. I think they see a wallet with a pulse." Martha didn't answer, she never does, but I kept talking. By the time I got home, it was after 10 p.m. I sat in my car in the driveway for a while looking at the house I had built with my own hands. The house where Kayla used to spend summers. The house where Martha died. The house that was now too big for one old man. I went inside. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the dark in Martha's favorite chair and I thought about the word respect. Not the loud kind, not the kind that comes with titles and money. The quiet kind, the kind that says, "I see you, I value you, you are not a tool for my convenience." I hadn't felt that kind of respect in years, maybe decades. And I realized, sitting in that dark room, that I had been the one teaching people how to treat me. By never saying no, by never setting a boundary, by always being available, always generous, always understanding. I had taught my daughter that my love could be purchased, and she had become an expert shopper. That night I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Kayla used to do her homework, the same table where Martha and I ate thousands of meals, and I made a decision. Not a rash one, not an angry one. A quiet, cold decision. I was going to stop, not stop loving Jennifer, not stop being her father, but stop being her bank. Tomorrow I would call my lawyer. Tomorrow I would change my will. Tomorrow I would stop answering requests for money. But tonight I would sit here in the dark and let the weight of the last 12 years settle into something I could carry. I didn't know how Jennifer would react. I didn't know if Kayla would still visit. I didn't know if I would end up alone. But I knew one thing for certain: I would rather be alone and respected than surrounded and used. The sun came up at 6:47 a.m. I watched it through the kitchen with my lawyer, a man named Dennis Hooper, who had handled Martha's estate and my will for years. Dennis was 63, bald, and never surprised by anything. I told him I wanted to freeze Jennifer's access to my accounts. Not cut her out entirely, not yet, but put a halt to any further transfers without my explicit written approval. "Harold," Dennis said, "you know she's going to notice immediately. The car payment, the school tuition, the credit card bills, they're all tied to your accounts." I said, "I know." He was quiet for a moment, then he said, "Can I ask what happened?" I told him about Thanksgiving, about the paper napkin, about the look in Bradley's eyes when he talked about his $100,000. Dennis listened. When I finished, he said, "I've been doing this for 38 years. Most of my clients wait too long. You're actually doing this at exactly the right time." I didn't feel like it was the right time. I felt like I was cutting off a limb, but I signed the papers. The first call from Jennifer came 3 days later. It was a Monday morning. I was eating oatmeal in my kitchen, reading the newspaper, the actual paper kind, because I still don't trust screens. My phone buzzed. Jennifer's face appeared on the screen. The photo was from 5 years ago when she still smiled at me. "Hi, sweetheart," I said. "Dad, there's a problem with my credit card. It got declined at the grocery store. I've never been so embarrassed. Can you call the bank?" I put down my spoon. I said, "Jennifer, I canceled the automatic payments. All of them. I'm not going to be paying for your expenses anymore." Silence. Then her voice changed. It got higher, tighter. "What do you mean you canceled them? What about Kayla's school? What about the car? What about your husband's business? What about your vacations? What about the housekeeper and the landscaping and the pool service? Jennifer, I've given you and Bradley over $300,000 in the last 7 years. I have nothing left, my savings are gone, my pension barely covers my own bills." She didn't hear the part about being broke, she heard the part about control. "Dad, are you punishing me because of Thanksgiving? Because I asked you to dress nicer? That's so unfair, you're being so unfair." I took a breath. I wanted to tell her about the paper napkin, about the sigh when I tried to help, about the thousand small cuts that had accumulated into a wound I couldn't ignore, but I didn't. Because I knew she wouldn't understand. She had never been the one holding the broom. "I'm not punishing you, Jennifer. I'm setting a boundary. You're an adult. You have a husband. You have a degree in marketing. You can figure this out." She started crying, loud, performative sobs, the kind she'd used since she was a child to get what she wanted. "You don't love me. You never loved me like you loved Mom. You're just bitter because she died and left you alone." That one hurt. That one landed like a punch to the chest, but I didn't react. I had been preparing for this. I knew that when people are used to taking, your refusal feels like aggression. "Love you, Jennifer. I love Kayla. That's exactly why I'm doing this. Because I want to be your father, not your ATM. And I want you to be a whole person, not someone who needs to ask permission to buy groceries." She hung up. I sat there, oatmeal getting cold, phone still in my hand. I thought about calling her back. I thought about apologizing. I thought about writing another check just to make the crying stop. But I didn't. I finished my oatmeal. I washed the bowl. I went outside and started raking leaves. It was November. The trees were almost bare. The work was repetitive and simple, the kind of physical labor that lets your mind wander. I thought about Martha. She had been the one with the backbone in our marriage. She was the one who told Jennifer no when she wanted a second dessert, a later curfew, a more expensive prom dress. After Martha died, I had tried to be both parents, but I had only succeeded at being the soft one. That was my failure, not the money. The softness, the calls continued, every day for 2 weeks. Jennifer, then Bradley, then Jennifer again. The messages started with anger, moved to tears, then settled into something colder: ultimatums. "If you don't reinstate the payments, you won't see Kayla again. We'll tell her you abandoned us. You're dead to me." Each message chipped away at something inside me, but I didn't respond, not because I was strong, because I was afraid that if I opened my mouth, I would either apologize or scream. Neither would help. On the 15th day, I got a call from Kayla. She was using her mother's phone. Her voice was small. "Grandpa, Mom says you don't love us anymore. Is that true?" I closed my eyes. I thought carefully about what to say. "Kayla, I love you more than anything in this world. Nothing will ever change that, but love isn't about money, and sometimes love means letting people stand on their own feet." She didn't understand. She was 12. How could she? She said, "Okay," and then she handed the phone back to her mother. Jennifer didn't say anything. She just ended the call. That night, I didn't sleep again. I walked through my empty house, touching furniture, opening closets, looking at photo albums. There was a picture of Jennifer on her first day of kindergarten, wearing a yellow dress, holding a lunchbox with a cartoon unicorn. There was a picture of her on her wedding day, looking at Bradley like he was the answer to every prayer. There was a picture of Kayla as a baby, sleeping in my arms, Martha standing behind us, smiling. I had built this life, brick by brick, wire by wire. And now I was dismantling it. Not because I wanted to, because I had to. The breaking point came the next week. I received a letter, not an email, not a text, a physical letter from Bradley's lawyer. It was a cease and desist. They claimed that I had entered into a verbal contract to pay for certain expenses and that my cancellation constituted bad faith. They threatened to sue me for the remaining balance of the promised funds. I sat at my kitchen table, reading the letter twice. The language was formal, threatening, and absurd. There was no contract, there was no promise. There was only a father trying to help his daughter and a son-in-law who had turned that help into an entitlement. I called Dennis. He laughed when I read him the letter. He said, "Harold, this is what's called a nuisance letter. They have no case, but it tells you everything you need to know about how they see you, not as family, as an adversary." That word adversary hit me harder than anything Jennifer had said. I had spent 12 years trying to be a good father, a good grandfather, a good man, and I had become an adversary, not because I had done anything wrong. Because they had decided that my refusal to give was an act of war. I made a decision, a bigger one than before. I wasn't just going to stop paying. I was going to remove myself entirely from their financial ecosystem. I was going to sell the house in Hickory. I was going to move somewhere small, somewhere cheap, somewhere they couldn't find me if they wanted to, not to hide, to reset. The house sold in 4 months. I got $310,000, less than I had hoped, but enough. I paid off my debts. I put the rest into a new bank account that only I could access, and I moved into a one-bedroom apartment on the other side of Charlotte, not far from Jennifer's house, but far enough that I wasn't in their neighborhood anymore. I didn't tell them about the move. I didn't send a change of address. I just disappeared. For 6 months there was silence, no calls, no letters, no visits. I assumed they had written me off. I started building a new life, small, quiet, but mine. I volunteered at a community center, teaching basic electrical skills to young adults who couldn't afford trade school. I joined a senior walking group. I learned to cook, not well but better than before. I stopped waiting for the phone to ring. And then one evening in September, I got a text message from an unknown number. It was Kayla. "Grandpa, I got a new phone. Mom doesn't know I'm texting you. I miss you." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I wrote back, "I miss you too, sweetheart, more than you know." And I started a secret correspondence. She would text me from school, from her room late at night, from the bathroom when her parents were fighting. Bit by bit, I learned the truth of their situation. Without my money, the house of cards had collapsed. The luxury cars had been repossessed. The private school had withdrawn Kayla because the tuition was 9 months overdue. Jennifer had gone back to work, not in marketing but as a receptionist at a dental office. Bradley's disruptive fintech platform had never launched. He was working 2 jobs, delivering pizzas at night and selling cell phones during the day. They had moved out of the big house and into a two-bedroom apartment in a complex where the hallways smelled like cigarette smoke and someone had spray-painted graffiti on the laundry room door. Kayla said her mother cried a lot, said her father yelled at everyone, said she missed her old school, her old room, her old life, but she also said something else. She said, "Grandpa, Mom keeps looking at old pictures of you. She doesn't know I've seen her, but she sits on the couch at night and scrolls through her phone and cries." I didn't know what to do with that information. Part of me felt vindicated, part of me felt sad, and part of me, the part that still loved my daughter no matter what, felt the old urge to fix things, to write a check, to make it better. But I had learned something in the past year. Sometimes making it better is exactly the problem. Because when you always make it better, people never learn to make it better themselves. Christmas came. I spent it alone by choice. I volunteered at a shelter in the morning, serving meals to people who had nothing. In the afternoon, I went home, made myself a sandwich, and watched It's a Wonderful Life on a small TV that barely got reception. I thought about calling Kayla. I thought about calling Jennifer. I didn't. December 26th, my phone rang. It was Jennifer, not a text, not a message through Kayla, an actual phone call. I answered. Dad. Her voice was different, softer, smaller. The way she used to sound when she was a teenager, apologizing for missing curfew. "I'm here, Jennifer. I don't know how to say this. I've been trying to write it for months, but every time I try I get angry again, and I don't want to be angry anymore. I'm so tired of being angry." I waited. "I was wrong, Dad. About everything, about the money, about the way I treated you, about Thanksgiving, about the things I said. I was wrong and I'm sorry." She started crying, not the performative sobs from before, real crying. The kind that comes from a place so deep you can't fake it. I didn't say anything for a long time. I let her cry. I thought about all the years of silence, of sacrifice, of slowly disappearing. I thought about Martha. I thought about what she would want me to do. "I forgive you, Jennifer." She cried harder. "I don't deserve that." Not, but forgiveness isn't about deserving, it's about letting go of something that's poisoning you. We talked for an hour, not about money, about Kayla, about Martha, about memories. About the time Jennifer was 7 and she fell off her bike and scraped her knee and I carried her home on my shoulders while she sang a song she'd learned in school. About the time she graduated from college and I cried because I was so proud. About the time she called me after Kayla was born and said, "Dad, now I understand, now I know how much you loved me." We didn't solve everything that night, we didn't even try, but we opened a door, and that was enough. Over the next few months, I started seeing Jennifer and Kayla again. Slowly, carefully, lunch at a diner, an afternoon at a park, a trip to the library. We didn't talk about the past, we didn't talk about money, we just talked about being together. Bradley never apologized, he never called, he never acknowledged anything. Eventually, Jennifer left him. She said she couldn't stay married to someone who had turned her father into an enemy. The divorce was messy, expensive, and exhausting. But when it was over, Jennifer took back her maiden name. She started calling me every Sunday, not because she needed anything, because she wanted to. Kayla is 14 now. She's in public school and she's thriving. She made the honor roll. She joined the art club. She comes to my apartment every other weekend and we cook together real mashed potatoes the way Martha used to make them. She calls me the night before every test and I tell her the same thing Martha told me. "You've already done the work, now just trust yourself." Jennifer is still a receptionist. She's saving for a certification in medical coding. She lives in a small but clean apartment. She drives a used Honda. She doesn't have a housekeeper or a pool or a Tesla. But she has something she didn't have before, her own life. And she has a relationship with her father that isn't built on money. As for me, I'm 69 years old. I still live in the one-bedroom apartment. I still drive the same Ford Fusion. I still volunteer at the community center. I go for walks every morning. I eat oatmeal for breakfast. And every night before I go to sleep, I say thank you to Martha, to the universe, to whatever force decided to give me a second chance at being a father. The house in Hickory is gone. The savings are gone. The years of sacrifice are behind me, but I'm not poor. I'm richer than I've ever been because I finally learned that money is not the same as love, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop. If you're listening to this, and you're in a situation where you're giving and the people you love are taking and taking, I want you to hear something. It's okay to stop. It's okay to say no. It's okay to set a boundary. It's okay to choose yourself because you can't pour from an empty cup. And you can't be a good father, mother, partner, or friend if you've been drained dry. My daughter asked me once years ago why I never said anything, why I let it go on so long. I told her the truth because I was afraid of losing her. But what I learned is that you can't lose someone who was never really there. And sometimes the only way to find each other is to let go first. If this story touched you, if it made you think about your own boundaries, your own family, your own worth, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories. Subscribe to Miss Cat's Story for more true life narratives that will make you feel, think, and maybe even change. And leave a comment. Have you ever had to set a hard boundary with someone you love? I read every single one. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And remember, you matter even when no one is watching.